Okay, everybody, welcome, welcome. This is the IOTA Community Discord. We are here with our friends of Bankless Consulting. Um, we have a great presentation today about the Gitcoin grants program and the way the Gitcoin community hands out grants to all kind of cool Web3 projects. Um, Punchar of Bankless Consulting will present this to our community. We will have like 20, 25 minutes presentation, and then we will have time for open questions to our friends from Bankless Consulting about everything that might be interesting for the IOTA community around the way Gitcoin works and Gitcoin handles grants. And with this, I'll give over to Punchar, and I'm really looking forward to what you will present to us today.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the introduction. So, I'm Punchar Punkar, or in my previous life, Jan. I'm one of the co-founders of Bankless Consulting. You have been on a few calls before, so you probably know Bankless Consulting. It's like the first Web3 consulting company in the world, and we are helping different protocols to succeed in Web3 in terms of governance, tokenomics, marketing, community management, you name it. I'm also part of Gitcoin, so that's why I can kind of speak about the grants program. I'm helping Gitcoin with operations and tooling, so I'm very familiar how the processes work. So I'm looking forward for your questions after this presentation. So Gitcoin grants program. I I hope you are kind of familiar or you have heard before about it, because I believe Gitcoin is having great mission and doing great stuff in the space, funding public goods. So basically, their mission is to build and fund digital public goods and to empower communities of builders to connect and work together to create the future of the open web. Uh, that has been mission for a while. Actually, if now we look at the grants, what they are supporting, it's beyond digital public goods. So really, like Gitcoin grants now, it's like much wider and funding much more good things than it used to. Also, they basically evolved from couple thousand, which has been distributed at around one, to like couple $1 million, which has been distributed last round. And their vision is really to have, you know, open open environment. When we share stuff between each other, we can interact openly, and there is no kind of barriers to it. So it's really the open internet, open source software, and open economies. And how the grants program is actually uh, structured. There are three different types of rounds Gitcoin has. They have a main round. That was the round which everything has started with. So from first round, there was always the main round. It's happening every quarter, and it's the round which Gitcoin itself is managing and putting funds into it. Then there is a ecosystem round, which is something what IOTA might be interested in. It's basically when like an ecosystem partner is coming in and launching their own round with their own criteria, uh, who is eligible for the grants, how the round will work, what monitoring will be there, and what type of approval process will be in place. So, for example, one of the like longest standing ecosystem round is Uniswap. So Uniswap is funding the ecosystem round, I think, for already like 5 quarters. And then there are course rounds, which are kind of similar to ecosystem rounds in the way that there is always some external sponsors to the course round, but the course round it's not just like for that particular company, but it's more like for the cause. So it has been like ecology or carbon credit has been one cause, or that can be, directly like open source software, and focusing on that. So that's kind of the third bucket. And how the funds are coming to the program. So to the main round, it's basically Gitcoin Treasury, which is committing every round some amount of money, and you can see the amount on the forum. It's approved by their governance, so the stewards votes how much will be distributed to the main round. Then there are the ecosystem partners, which usually fund mainly their ecosystem round. However, there is also sometimes like a percentage which they put into the main round. So basically, just to be like part of the overall ecosystem, they might put like 90% in the ecosystem round, which they are managing, and 10% into the main round for every other project. And there are the which are like similar to the rounds partners, which are maybe founding the specific cause or like giving some additional money into kind of the ecosystem rounds. And then there are individual donors, which this is actually a big piece, because how Gitcoin works, and we will get into it later. It's like individual donors are actually deciding like how much the project gets, and in the process of deciding, they are not just like kind of voting for it, but they are also putting some money into it. So individual donors usually come, I think, around like 30% of the whole amount, which I feel like it's great, because they are deciding on the future of the projects and what they really want to see happening. And what's the size currently of the program? Like I said, like it started as a couple $1,000s, the round one. The last round were in $3 million distributed, just from the kind of main round, plus another 2 millions, if I'm not mistaken, for any additional rounds. And overall, Gitcoin has distributed $68 million in the history. So that's kind of like where we went from, like, really, we exponentially grow basically from few thousand to millions, what we are distributing now. And who are the key stakeholders in this grants program? So definitely it's Gitcoin. So Gitcoin is the one who's developing the technology behind, who is managing the main round, and they are also, making improvement to the products. So one of the improvements, what they are working on is like open source kind of the grants program, and really make it more decentralized. So Gitcoin does not need to be even involved at some rounds, and basically the company can run it on their own. And you know on top of that, like if there is any issue, like let's say the individual donor comes in, wants to put some money into carbon credit project, it doesn't go through, they can go to Gitcoin Discord, ask support, like to resolve their issue, and Gitcoin support will help to resolve those type of stuff. The same can be also for the project owners, which wants to ask for the grant uh, or for the donation. They cannot get through because of maybe some technical glitch, or they don't know what to fill out. Again, they can reach out to the support team, and they will help them out. Critical team, which is also part of the Gitcoin DAO, but I have put it like separately, because I think this is something what any project really needs, and that's like the really innovation happening there. It's a civil defense team. So because of the nature of the funding, which is quadratic funding, and like it's really important to know that it was a unique individual who has been funding it. Has been a lot of civil attacks happening, and Gitcoin has really built very strong civil defense team who can capture up to, I think, 95% of any civil attacks. And those 5% that are remaining, it's more or less like they are not sure if it's civil or not, but because like we want enable people, rather we keep that kind of 5% in in the system. But there has been really progress on that, and like the new product what they are developing there, it's Gitcoin passport, so unique identification and so on. And the third stakeholder, it's the round manager, and it can be someone like IOTA, or it is Uniswap at the moment. Uh, I think Coinbase had their rounds as well. Aave had also, and so on. That's basically the ones who are managing the round. So they have like specific eligibility criteria which they are setting up. They have approval process in place, so every single application goes to the team, and either they decide like that they want Gitcoin team, like Gitcoin Sybil defense team, to cover all the Sybil defense and maybe also part of the eligibility criteria, and they want to discount just something, or they want full process to be on their side. And that's basically up to the round manager to set this up. Uh, and as we talk about the kind of how the approval process work, uh, so it's really like starting with the grant submission, where any project who wants to be part of the round or part of the seasonal, or like every quarter it's happening, Gitcoin grants, they need to submit their project description. They need to basically cover all the aspects what they are trying to do, why they should be getting the funding, and why they are eligible for it. So the eligibility is really important there, because Gitcoin main round is funding public goods. So at that main round there needs to be really clear eligibility that the project is a public good, and there are some standard no's to that. So if the project, for example, already have revenue and it's really like traditional business, like they might not get funding because there is no like public good into it. However, if they are trying to develop something what they will open source and it's not really part of the kind of business process, they might. So we are trying to really distinguish like what can bring something better to the community. And that's on the grant review part. The grant review can be either done by Gitcoin DAO, as I mentioned, for the main round and so on, or that can be done by the round partner. So there is a specific round which might be funding anything what happens on Uniswap or anything that happens at IOTA ecosystem. It doesn't need to be even public goods, but you need to build on IOTA, you need to open source the code, or you need to get some approval uh, from the ecosystem. That's where the grants review happening, and either the round manager or Gitcoin DAO is doing so. When the grant is approved, it appears on the main page, and then individual donors can start donating to that grant. And basically, by getting those grants from the individuals, their matching fund, and I will get into it on the next slide. The matching thanks to Quadratic funding, it's increasing. So after they get these individual grants, which they get immediately, it's basically in real time, they also will be eligible after the round close for the matching fund based on number of donations they have received. So that's kind of how it works. And I've been kind of talking about it, I haven't explained, but maybe just like asking the audience, like, do you know what is quadratic funding? Should I actually explain, or everyone knows how it works?
I think it's good if you explain it. I know it, but I don't know if most people in the audience know it. So give a short intro on that, please.
Yeah, definitely. So quadratic funding is basically a specific way how to distribute funds in a democratic fashion, which should be kind of fair to everyone. And how it works. In very simple terms, it's like it matters more the number of contributors giving the fund rather the amount. to get the matching. And the Quadratic funding basically considering the percentage of number of donors donating to individual project compare to the overall projects, and then the amount what they have received, which then will be quantified as a percentage of the overall matching fund distributed uh, to the project. In more simple terms, it's if you have one grant which is getting $100 from one funder, they will get $10 in the matching because they got just basically one contribution. If you have another grant which is getting $100 from 10 people, like they will get much higher matching. Crypto Beast, yeah. If you have any question, let me know. Grants too, because they got money from 10 people, they get much higher matching even though they get the same amount, and the matching will be approximately $190. It depends really on the size of the matching pool and number of the projects. But here you can see why it's important to have really good simple defense, because we need to make sure that there cannot be one funder with 10 addresses who will be just distributing the funds, because then they can game kind of the overall funding mechanism. And here are some examples, already mentioned it, of the ecosystem rounds where I see, IOTA might be interested in, because it's really like it's managed by those companies. So even though like it seems like Gitcoin grants are just public goods and like it's just like for any type of project, no. Now currently there's these ecosystem rounds which really fund like the projects which will be building on that ecosystem, and it will be part of the eligibility criteria. So you can see Uniswap, Polygon. Take the monitoring of the use of the funds and success of the project. So Gitcoin currently does not have any monitoring. However, from incentives perspective, because when you submit the project or the grant proposal, it will never kind of leave the platform. Like you don't need to submit every single round. Like it will be there. You might need to kind of apply for the ecosystem round because you might not be part of it from previous quarter, and it can be new. However, like there is an incentive to be delivering and kind of updating the community about the progress, because when next round hits, you want those people to kind of give you again few dollars, so you get more matching funds. So the incentives are in place. The monitoring, it's not currently something what Gitcoin is doing, but some of the round partners have something what they are doing on their side, and it's again on them. Some success stories, and I think it's last slide, so get ready with your questions. You can see a lot of really like big names in the ecosystem, and they all been funded initially by Gitcoin grants. So Zapper, Uniswap, like those are really like Uniswap, especially like multi-billion-dollar companies. They have got their first initial capital from Gitcoin grants. So it's really cool like how actually this evolved and who has been part of this, because like if you see these numbers, like it's not just really random projects, like really cool projects are getting funded through that, and also getting great marketing and publicity through that, because currently I think there was, and please don't hold me, I think there was above 100,000 donors, individual donors, in the last round. So 100,000 people sees what is on the platform, which is I think great. So yeah, that's it for now. Okay, future plans. Sorry, forgot about this one. but I already mentioned it. Gitcoin Passport is really some new product of Gitcoin for the civil defense. Can be used for other projects as well. They are expanding on it because the civil defense is really super important for quadratic funding or quadratic voting. And Grants 2.0, which will be decentralized open source version of the Grants program, when any project can take the code and run their own round on their own and just ask maybe Gitcoin for some support or not. So that's kind of what's the future here. Thank you very much for your attention, and let me know if you have any questions.
Wow, Puncha, thank you first. This was actually really amazing, I think. So yeah, goes out to the audience. People, do we have questions? Okay, I'll start with a couple of questions because I definitely have. Um, I've looked into Gitcoin a couple of times, and I basically really always have been really impressed with it. Maybe it's something that we can clarify a bit more how the funding really works. Yeah, you said you have around 100,000 individual donors. So basically, if let's say I'm coming in as I want to support a project. So I come into Gitcoin and I see different proposals on the website or something, and whenever a proposal is there that I really like, and I think, hey, wow, that's really something absolutely useful. That's a great public good. Basically, this somebody should build this. I can donate a small amount of funds to this project, and the more people do these small donations, the higher funding in the end the project will get out of the whole pool of all donations that have been there. Yeah, this is basically the principle behind it, or?
Yeah, so let me give you an example. And also, I checked the numbers. I think it's 500,000 people actually contributed to round 12. I don't
Mhm.
know the latest number, so it can be even up to million at the moment. So it's really like getting more and more popular. And how it will work. And let's say if a concrete example, if IOTA decides to have their round at Gitcoin. So IOTA decides they want to have their own round, so and they want to spend $100,000. So they put $100,000 in the matching fund, and then set up the eligibility criteria, and let's say 100 projects will kind of apply and be eligible, and then the whole IOTA and broader community can kind of donate individually to those projects if they like them. So if they like those projects, they will be donating to those. And let's say the first project, the top project will get 100 votes or like 100 donations, every donation like $5 or something, and there will be like 90, 80, 70, and go down linearly, let's say. So when the round ends, because the first project had like the most donations, which has been 100, they will get also the biggest percentage of the matching fund. So you have like 100,000 in the matching pool. So that project with the 100 will get, and approximately, I think it will be, we have just 100 projects, which is not a lot. Therefore, they will get, I think, around like 6% will be when we will calculate it, and then like it will go basically less and less and less. So basically, what I think this is solving is like, apart from the, if you can compare it to other grants program like are like, ask me for money, someone approve it, distribute the exact amount. This is more like, this is the project, this is what we want to do, and actually community decides how much they will get, and they will decide that with kind of their own wallet, which I feel like it's like super powerful, because it's not just like, if I vote, I can vote randomly because I don't have anything like I
Mm,
don't have skin in the game, but now I do.
yeah. Yeah, that's a super interesting approach. Um, do you, I mean, you're part of this since quite a long time. Um, do you see this working out for yeah, I mean, for projects that have really kind of specific needs. I mean, if you want to build a cool D app and whatever, you have a team of developers, and you basically know you can calculate. I'll going to have this takes me 3 months, and we are 6 people, and we this is our capital that we basically need. Um, have you seen projects struggling in getting the required funding from Gitcoin in this way? Or do you see that they basically they get a part of it, but they still then sometimes need to look for other sources of funding if they're not really matched with what they basically need?
Yeah, I think it's fair point. I think at the beginning, when there was not that many projects involved, they were getting decent amount of money, which was enough like for Uniswap to stand up.
Mm.
However, now there is more projects. It's focusing rather on the long tail, I would say, and that kind of let them start. But if they prove themselves, they will have much better chances to get like another funding, maybe from other sources or like direct funding.
Yeah.
So what I see here as a cool thing is like you get kind of because you are on the platform where will be 1 million people, like you get some publicity there, both like the round partner like IOTA or Uniswap or something, and also the project, so people get to know this kind of stuff, and then you distribute the fund based on the community desire for the projects to let them start. And if you feel like there is really a future, then you can fund them directly later on. But you don't need to kind of decide what you will fund first, and community decide basically for you.
Yeah. Um, and this you have this kind of this civil defense force, and they basically are in general looking through all the grant applications that are for the main round, but they can also be kind of let's say employed, or they offer this as a service to these ecosystem funding rounds also.
Yes, at the moment, till we develop the grants 2.0, it's like part of Gitcoin. So basically, if you will be the round partner, you will get the stable team also to like evaluate all the applications.
Okay, cool. And so that's basically, yeah, that's basically making sure that in those in the match funding process, there isn't any, or there very likely isn't anybody sneaking in with a lot of alt accounts and kind of trying to game the thing. Um,
Yep,
uh,
exactly.
yeah. So how does basically I read a couple. I've read a bit about this. So basically, I think that's kind of a team of people, team of they are basically working for Gitcoin that really go through. They check on-chain data. They yeah, they're really kind of looking through all this funding and matchmaking things, and they have developed some tools and AI stuff also to really figure out if there is like a pattern of a sybil in the thing. So, and it's pretty much really successfully working now, or
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely working, and there is two sides of it. Like one, it's like this Gitcoin passport product, which is basically to identify a person, and there is like different levels of identification, and depends on how much you are identified, the percentage of your contribution is count. So if I'm fully identified, it's actually if I donate dollar, it's counted as a $1.5. If I'm the lowest, I think lowest is the 50%. Means if I donate dollar, it's just like 50 cents. So the Gitcoin passport works that way. So if I identify through different channels, which is harder to game kind of, then I will also get like higher contributions uh, weight. And then on the other side, if I'm already in the system, they are checking the on-chain data, they are checking the patterns, but the patterns are very important. So they check those patterns, like if someone is donating always $2.1, something like that, and there is like too many transactions the similar way, or it's happening at some like time frames, or there is like IP addresses from like same locations donating like to the same project and so on. And there are more sophisticated ways of doing so. This is just some basics. So how this works? Like they usually do a manual check first. Means like when they have started 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, they did just manual checks, and there was just a set of people. And when they identify this is a problem, they develop a tool for it. And now the tool is very sophisticated and basically can really like catch most of the symbols, but because they are evolving as well, those attacks, they still have the people to be kind of manually checking a random set of data and identifying if there is some problem, how the tool needs to evolve.
Okay. I mean, that still sounds a bit like quite a complex thing. That definitely there is kind of seems to be kind of a bunch of people involved there because I mean, we all know that there is this kind of thing that quadratic funding is. It has this problem. Um, so basically they are funded by Gitcoin DAO itself. Yeah. So they usually I think they might be working. This is seems to be like a full-time job or something. Yeah. So they're funded through Gitcoin itself. They are kind of part of the team. Yeah.
Yes, they are like a work stream at Gitcoin now, yes, and they
Yeah.
are getting funding every season. You can see their budget proposals on the forum.
Um,
So I have a question. So how do they get others to actually contribute to the donations? Because you said like there are like 500,000 people. So do they have an incentive? Do they get something back from the project, or what is in it for them? How do they get them to contribute?
I think there is a lot of people who wants to contribute to good stuff without like necessarily getting anything back. It's like I think it's the majority of people basically contributing maybe to 10 15 projects, spending between like 50 to $200. So it's not like a huge amount, but like it's like something how they feel. uh, Definitely there is some like social recognition. So they post about it on Twitter. They can say like that they are doing that because they feel like it's for a good cause. There is also sometimes like Gitcoin at the moment. It's like a airdrop mining. It's sometimes happening because like they expect that the project will then like have airdrop and they will consider the early donations. So definitely can be some financial incentive there, but it's something what it's not allowed like to say upfront. Like let's say like we don't want the projects that like on the Gitcoin platform to say if you vote for me I will give you token. Those projects will be taken out of the platform because it needs to be the votes needs to be for like good cause, not for financial gains. If in a year they have airdrop and they consider the data, like that's different story, but like it should not be kind of like upfront financial incentive. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sure, thanks.
Yeah, I think this is really a cool mechanism because basically I mean, this is we know how this works with donations. If you think, okay, yeah, I can $50, that's I can give it $100 and I can give it, but I think a lot of people have the issue that say, okay, what does my 50 or $100, what effect basically does it have it for the project? I mean, they maybe need $50,000 or something. If I give 50 or not, it doesn't really matter. But with a system like this, basically, your $50 can be matched with another thousand or whatever if the project is really popular and you get more other people's, and then basically you kind of have this huge effect with a small donation. If it's a popular project and the everybody there really thinks that it needs to be funded, and then basically kind of even if the community only donates small, the rest will be then covered out of the big pot that is kind of coming from the, let's say if we would do this with IOTA, let's say we set up an IOTA treasury funding program round in Gitcoin, yeah, and we take like you said, we take 100K or we take 200K out of the IOTA treasury and say, okay, this is available. All projects that apply there and that work for that basically fit in our guiding principles, and then basically the IOTA community or everybody can decide, okay, these are the most important projects for us, and this 100K will then be matched to the most important projects for the community. And so with your $50, you can potentially be matched with a much larger amount from the major treasury, and this project can really get quite some funding if it's something that basically everybody wants to have. Yeah, and that's kind of a cool mechanism behind that, that you really don't need to give a lot, but if you give it to the right project, you can have a big impact on it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You are giving power to people, basically.
Kunkar, in that example of IOTA, like say IOTA put aside part of their treasury for a matching grants program and encouraged people in the community to vote and like give small donations that IOTA would be matching. Is there a reason that IOTA would use the Gitcoin platform to do that versus just like kind of stealing the idea and doing it themselves? What is the technology behind the Gitcoin platform that would make someone want to do that rather than just setting up their own grants program?
Yeah, good question. So Gitcoin wants to open source it, and with the like next version of the grants program, like there will be option to just use the technology. You don't need to even steal it. You can just take it. It will be open source and like run your own grants program. The what still will be challenging there, it's kind of the civil defense what we talk about. It's like really complex and it's just hard to tackle, so it will be very expensive to set up this kind of team and all the analytics around it. And another thing is, if you put it on the Gitcoin webpage, basically on Gitcoin round, you get this 500,000, I think now it's up to million people getting there and seeing IOTA ecosystem round, seeing all the projects which wants to be built on IOTA, and you are really getting traction there. If you do it internally, you will get only people who already know about IOTA, and so that will be probably the difference there.
Yeah, I think that's a good
Okay,
thing.
thanks.
Yeah, because you basically, I mean, if you see it from the other side, as a developer or like a coder or a programmer or a team that has skills, basically you go to Gitcoin and you have a broad range of possible jobs that you can fit in. Yeah, and especially for teams that might be, or for projects that might need or that might want to increase their outreach and also maybe struggle to get enough developers from internally for building all the things basically that you need. I think this can be really an interesting thing that you're opening yourself quite easy up to a very, very large developer community out there that might just say, okay, I have time. That sounds interesting. Sounds also like a profitable matching funding for me. Um, cool. I'll apply. I put myself up there, and basically maybe it fits. And so you kind of can create some outreach into other developer communities with a project like that is maybe not as popular as Uniswap or 1inch or Polygon or the others. So that might be really an interesting thing of getting a foot into the door to reach out new contributors into a project. Yeah.
Okay, I got another question about Gitcoin. So I looked at the round 14 as a donor, and like you said, it really is an opportunity for the long tail of projects to get funded. I was looking at a lot of projects that had $30, $100, $1,000 of funding, which is nice, but it's not really going to make that much of a difference in terms of like the project that they're building. It's just not a lot of money. How do projects in Gitcoin, how do they move from the long tail to being more on the fat tail and like getting significant 5, 6, 7 figures worth of funding? Is there an algorithm that helps them move up the tail, or how does that happen?
That's a good question, and I think it will be very individual. Yeah, the top, the top grants, let's say, are getting, and I just see like the ZK round, like it was like 160,000 they are getting, or 50,000. In the other rounds, they can get up to 50 as well. Uh, it's for the top projects, basically to kick off the stuff. And I feel like, if you are somewhere between 30 and 150 grants, you can build something what you can then show to investors, and you can really get the bigger funding later on. But this will really enable you to like start and to not be worried that like you don't have any kind of funds to kick off your projects. And what it gives you on top of it, it's the community support. And I think this is important. If you see that 1,000 people have been voting with their money for your project, you probably up to something. And I think this kind of verification is also super important for those projects.
Yeah, it's just like in round 14, there were, I don't know how many thousands of projects on the site. So how do you, and this might just be a rhetorical question, and I don't want to take up too much airtime, but just to throw it out there, like, hypothetically, how do you get from being one of 30,000 projects on the Gitcoin platform that's getting like $100 or so to being one of those 10 projects that's getting $100,000? Is that just you're spamming your network and getting everyone in your Discord to go give $1 on Gitcoin so that you can raise your visibility? Or is there a way within the Gitcoin platform to actually gain traction without having to do all the mobilization yourself, I guess? And again, this could just be a rhetorical question.
No, I think this is a great question actually. Like, yes, the project, you as a project owner needs to be committed to your project. It won't just give you money. Like, if you just put the application there and without like you being committed, you being vocal about it on Twitter and kind of building the community and enthusiasm around it, like you won't get much traction. Like, and this is like, we might, like, it might be not that great for some of the, let's say, more introverted founders, which will probably struggle with that. But it will also prove that like you are committed kind of to this project, and you have done some work to actually like raise the awareness about what you are trying to do. So I'm really like here. I'm like, and I'm not sure if it's good or bad. Gitcoin, it's solving it the way that like there is a random selection will be on the top of the page when you refresh. So it used to be more like, most popular grants like should be first, but then it was kind of like everyone who got like lucky at the first hour or first day of the grants round like was there forever. So now we are trying to be more like random and like also like have this category like hidden gems and so on. So really we get traction to every single project, and if you really like the idea and like the team and so on, they should have a chance to succeed. But again, be very kind of frank here. Like I think like you need to do your homework.
Mhm. In relation to this, so when a project presents themselves in Gitcoin, are they, let's say, is because I think that's basically the thing. You can either have a very easy access for projects, which kind of produces an amount of, let's say, spam. Because if you just you just put up a Discord handle and 3 lines of text and a nice little picture of what you want to build, um, that's super easy to apply. But of course, it creates very likely a lot of random and not really well thought through applications that then in the end, like Chuck said, they end up with $50 after a couple of weeks because they're just not interesting for anybody. Um, is this something that happens? I mean, you have this main thing, but you said the ecosystems they can basically set up a bit of their own rules, or you can also set up a more strict application criterias, where you kind of filter out, let's say, low quality projects from the beginning. Otherwise, I can imagine if you have to scroll through 375 different proposal projects that might be interesting for your ecosystem, it's can be quite difficult to figure out what is really a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely make your own and like your own eligibility criteria. It can be something like you need to post first on IOTA forum and get at least 10 upvotes or something like that, or like 10 thumbs up in the Discord of IOTA to be approved on the Gitcoin. So, you can get some kind of cross check there, or it can be really you reviewing it and approving it. So it's really up to you.
Ah, yeah. Okay, yeah. So it could even be that uh, there is kind of like let's say like a pre-selection criteria, and then basically um, those projects get approved and then presented to the community over Gitcoin, leveraging the technology of the platform, leveraging the functionalities that are there. Um, but yeah, I think it's basically very likely up to the project how intensively they require the projects to prepare themselves and to present themselves there. Yes.
Yep, definitely.
One other question, because as far as I know, I mean, well, like I said, we are kind of a bit of a not fan, but we tried already with IOTA to get a bit into Gitcoin. I think we even did put up some, or we tried to put up some request for proposal there because we wanted to have, I think we wanted to have our ledger integration built. We were looking for a team basically. As far as I remember, we had some struggles because IOTA is, of course, it's not an ERC20 token. Yeah. Um, I mean, this might be a little bit too technical, but do you know if it actually really works from the technical side with projects or with tokens or with coins that are not based on ERC20, EVM, ETH, source code? Let's say, could Solana be there, which is kind of not ETH based or ERC20 based? Because I think there was some kind of problem why we couldn't really get into this with IOTA.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Definitely, we can discuss with the team as they are building kind of the next version about integration. Like I know that there is like ERC20 is possible to be kind of used as a funding mechanism. Uh, I don't think there is native integration to IOTA or Solana. Um, there is integration like if other chains like it's more like some CK rollups or like Polygon.
Mm.
So I think there can be workaround like that on the back end. It gets transferred. Means like that funds will get distributed in probably DAI or something like that on the Ethereum
Yeah.
chain, but like your funds to the main will be so what I'm basically saying, definitely it's something what we can manually do, to turn like from IOTA, I think,
Mm.
the value. However, there is probably not native integration.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're going to have also EVM chain and stuff then. So basically, it might not work directly, but along the road, I can see definitely being us also interoperable with this. Um, yeah, that's definitely something to think about for the community. And I mean, all the mechanisms around this, of course, it sounds like it's definitely to building up such a Sybil defense thing is definitely a big task. And I don't think that a lot of projects, even if it gets open sourced, because the algorithms behind it and the people with the experience behind it, they won't be part of the open source thing, I'm sure. So building something as a copy of this, I think it's not a big risk that others really try to run a Gitcoin clone on their own. But the principles behind it may not even be the quadratic funding, but basically the the matchmaking from community interest. Yeah, so you of course can have it as a full quadratic funding, but you could also think about creating things like, okay, you have like a pool or a vault, and yeah, figure out ways to work on similar principles of getting really the community involved and the community deciding with their own contribution and making this kind of matchmaking funding. I think that's a really interesting and and good way um, for a community to participate in it. I mean, it might be even something that you can combine with the traditional grant committee funding or something like this. So it's really a good way of having inspiration of what else can be done with a community treasury and with a grant program instead of the usual things that are done. Yeah, so that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. I think I really like the empowerment for the community and really like not just voting with a vote, but voting with your money, which I feel like the skin in the game is kind of very important when we are doing the decisions.
Yeah, because I I mean we are talking since several months now about this, and this is really something that I always hear from a certain amount of people that they really say, okay, this if you make a grants committee and if you make just the funds, they just go out without anybody having any, like I said, there's no skin in the game for people that make the decision. There might be also no returns, and there's kind of a so there is definitely a group of people that kind of demand this thing, that a community can, yeah, they can put their money where their mouth is, and if they really want something and they need something and they say, wow, it's a great thing, and okay, I give a small amount to support this thing, and I know it's going to be matched with a much larger amount if this thing gets accepted. This is a nice incentive to align also a community behind a certain narrative and certain projects that might really benefit everybody. Yeah, it's really a good way of approaching this.
I cannot agree more.
Okay, cool. Do we have somebody from the audience got some questions, or where are we, my friends?
Just a couple comments. I think the idea sounds very interesting, but I do have some criticisms. I guess I have mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, it seems like, you know, if you're a project and you need a certain amount of funding due to the quadratic nature, it's hard to tell if you're going to meet your funding needs. You don't know how much you need from the community and how much is going to be matched until the funding round is over. If it's just used as a portion of your funding, that's fine. At the same time, I think the community may have a little pushback with something like this just because they already see the treasury as community funds and then they're asked to donate more on top. I don't know. I do like the fact that you can open up the investment to a wider audience and get out of the IOTA bubble and maybe get some other interested investors involved. I don't know. Those are my initial reactions anyway.
No, I think that that's the right one, and definitely you need to hear what your community is saying. I think the risk with like deciding as a community without like putting the money in there, it's like it's hard to say no to stuff, and people generally tend to say yes to anything almost like you know. So if they will have the right incentive to vote in the right direction, it's probably one thing, and it's not like bad behavior per se. It's just like people think differently. Like I think differently when I need to put $2 there, and it doesn't need to be a big one. Than if it's just a vote, you know. So it's just like the nature of people, and like I feel that can make some difference. But as you said as well, like you know, there might be like not enough funding, or you don't know how much funding you are getting. I feel like you can have this as a one aspect of supporting the ecosystem, and the aspect which is like you know more like far-reaching and like more early projects kind of focused. If you have some project which is already going and they just need additional funding to deploy, you know, something, I think there needs to be more like predictable budgeting.
Yeah, I think I see it similar. It sounds really something for, like you said, that's public goods, and but especially things that are maybe sometimes you have things that don't really need a clear 100% fixed budget, but basically kind of everybody knows that it would be good to have this. Um, and then you can figure out in such a way, okay, how much will be available for this kind of thing over the next couple of months, to start something up. Yeah, like Rob said, for it's difficult for teams to try to rely on something like this. I think this might not be, but sometimes it's also not teams. Sometimes it might even be something like infrastructure costs or something. Yeah, costs of having a node pool or a validator pool running or things like that. That basically in the end everybody knows it needs to be there and it needs to be funded, and everybody can contribute a small amount on extra, which also then will help the treasury to not be drained too much, because you always have this kind of participation that will help. And I think there will be people there that are happy to contribute in this way, because then basically they have a way of making their own decisions where funding should go. Yeah. So if you have a treasury committee, basically the community they give the budget, and then they very often don't have much influence in the end on what projects are funded. The only thing is after 6 months or a year, they can vote other people into the committee or whatever. But here, basically, you have a bit more influence, especially if you have some funds to allocate to say, okay, that's something I really want, and other stuff that I don't want to be built, I don't put any small donations there, and then might you have a little bit more influence basically on what could be funded. Yeah, but
I feel like this would be like, if we talk about IOTA, it would be like, it would make more sense like if it would be its own project. So like the treasury could be something like either Aave or like the Bankless Consulting DAO grants, and like Gitcoin could be its own project, so people can basically have one part where they can vote and they know, they can't really choose who gets the funds, but then they have another project like Gitcoin on IOTA where they can really decide on their own which projects they want to fund.
Yes, I also see it. I think it will not work as the only thing. And I think it's also not like this. I mean, you have Uniswap, you have Aave, basically all bigger Web3 projects, they have a program running on Gitcoin besides their own grant program. I mean, we've seen Aave, they have their own, Uniswap have their own, but they also have this thing running on Gitcoin with a small amount, or let's say a smaller part of their treasury, where they say, okay, put it up in Gitcoin for different ways for different projects, something that might not be so specified or not so crucial and critical to the project, but where they can basically reach out to a broader community of developers to get a bit traction from there. But definitely it shouldn't very likely be the only thing that is used to distribute grants and funding, because then you have this bit of unpredictable thing, and for teams it also might be not super attractive if you like Puncha said, if you have a budget, you want to build this, you need this amount of funding, and either it's a yes or a no. Otherwise you basically you can't plan, and you might move to another thing to do. But as a part of a treasury, or as a part of grant giving, this can be pretty interesting, I think. It's a bit of a different approach, but might be something useful to test out if it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It should be something like on top of a normal grants program. Basically, you have like advanced selection of the projects, because you are basically asking the whole crypto community just like be voting on projects and what makes sense. And also like you are getting like traction in other places than just like within your own ecosystem. And on top of everything, like just being out there and be funding kind of these public goods, and you might put 100,000 in your all round or 200,000, and then you put like, I don't know, 20 into the main round, and then you basically funding with those 20 all the public goods which are on the platform. So I think it's a good thing to do. On top of that, it actually can bring value to IOTA, because it can really find projects which you would normally not find maybe, and then you fund them a little bit and they prove themselves, and then they get into the real program which you have just internally within IOTA, get more funds and really succeed.
Yes. Cool. We have some, let me see in the chat. Na, 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 na. Okay, I don't think we have something in the chat. No, that was answered by Chuck. Anyone else got some questions to Punja, or how is it?
So if there is no questions, thanks everyone for your time. I hope you enjoyed the presentation about Gitcoin grants, and I hope I answer all your questions or concerns. If you have any, other after you maybe revisit it later on, my DMs are open, so feel free to reach out.
Excellent. Puncha, thanks very much. Also, Chuck, I saw he has already disappeared to the next meeting, I think. It was really interesting. I think it was new and a different way. And I'm really happy that we kind of brought this up after we have seen now two, let's say, standard grant committee thing. Definitely something to think about for the community. Thanks a lot. Did you basically post the presentation somewhere, or you can send me in DM and I will put it in our governance channel so everybody later on can just skip through the slides of Puncha. And yeah, absolutely great. Thanks a lot, and have a good evening, everybody. We will see you next week again. I don't know if Puncha or somebody else from Bankless Consulting will host the next two meetings next week on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Sounds perfect. Some of my team members will be here. I might be here as well, and you can look forward for some another innovative idea how to actually handle grants.
Yes. Okay, everybody, thanks a lot. Have a nice afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are out there in the world, and see you again. Bye
See you all.
bye.